From the wise words of Chris Berman, football is back, 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 back. It is week number 1 of the 2024 fantasy football season. And in today's video, we are going to be breaking down my top 5 defenses to stream for week number 1, as well as 2 honorable mentions. The reason as to why we stream defenses weekly is while there are some big hitters at the defensive position in the NFL, guys like the Jets, these defenses that everyone loves, they are going to have tough matchups a bunch of times in the season. So the way you avoid sticking with a defense every single week is by streaming defenses based upon their matchup. And in today's video, we're going to be going over 5 defenses that I love for week number 1. But before we could get into things, I would like to ask that if you guys are new to the channel and you do end up enjoying today's video, that you please make sure to hit that subscribe button down below. And while you're down there, whether you are new to the channel or not, please make sure that you leave a like on today's video. It would help me out a ton. If you want to follow me on Twitter or X, please do so at NotriousFantasy. And if you'd like access to my week 1 rankings or get an answer to any of the questions you guys may have, check out the Patreon link in the video description for $7.50. So without further ado, let's get into my week number 1 defenses to stream. We begin with the first defense to stream for week number 1 of the 2024 fantasy football season, and that is the Seattle Seahawks going up against the Denver Broncos at home in Seattle. The Seahawks defense is currently rostered in 24% of leagues on Yahoo, 22.5% of leagues on NFL, and 39.4% of leagues on ESPN. So to qualify to make it into the defenses to stream video, you have to be rostered in 50% or less leagues in 2 out of the 3 platforms. So if you're good on Yahoo, under 50%, if you're under 50% on NFL, but you're over 50% on ESPN, you would qualify to make it into today's video. But the Seahawks are rostered in 50% or less leagues in every single league, the highest being ESPN with 39.4%. So a couple of weeks ago, the Denver Broncos head coach Sean Payton has named Bo Nix as the starting quarterback for the team ahead of Jarrett Stidham and the MILF hunter Zach Wilson. I don't think anyone was really shocked by that news. No one was awestruck by the fact that Bo Nix was going to be the starting quarterback. And I actually think that Bo Nix is going to be a successful NFL quarterback. With that said, though, streaming defenses up against rookie quarterbacks early on in the season has been a staple of my defense to stream videos for years. The Seahawks are currently 5.5 point favorites via the FanDuel Sportsbook, and the Broncos rank second lowest in terms of implied point total on the week, tied with the Carolina Panthers. While I do not believe that the Seattle Seahawks have one of the best defense in the NFL, while they are not an unstoppable force, an unmovable object like the old school Legion of Boom or the 85 Bears, they should be a mid-tier defense all season long, which is good enough for me up against a rookie quarterback with suspect weapons. Now, if Bo Nix was rolling out there with the Caleb Williams wide receiver core of Keenan Allen, Rome Odunze, and wiki DJ Moore, then maybe I would be singing a different tune. But frankly, when your wide receiver core is Cortland Sutton, who I like, Josh Reynolds, who hasn't really done diddly squat in the NFL, Marvin Mims Jr., Troy Franklin, it makes me just a whole lot less optimistic, since I really do think that Bo Nix is a solid quarterback. But with that wide receiver weapon core out there, and with this being his first ever NFL start in Seattle, the game's not even in Denver. It's in Seattle. It's going to be loud as fuck. So I don't really want to be starting Bo Nix or very many Denver Broncos players in this game. So I'm definitely going to be looking to stream the Seattle Seahawks defense up against the Denver Broncos. And I feel as though the Seahawks defense could finish top 5 in fantasy points at the defense position this week. The best part about the Seattle Seahawks defense, the kicker, is that in week number 2, you can actually stick with them. You can ride with them. Broncos country, let's ride. You can ride the Seahawks defense one more time, pause because they are playing up against the New England Patriots in week 2 in New England, up against Jacoby Brissett, unless magically they pull the plug on Jacoby Brissett and insert Drizzy Drake May in week number 2. Moving to defense number 2 to stream on the week, we got the New Orleans Saints versus the Carolina Panthers. The Saints were rostered in 48% of leagues on Yahoo, 15.1% on NFL, and 79.4% on ESPN. The reason why there's such a drastic difference from website to website is because of the pre-draft rankings. So if a defense is ranked inside of the top 12 based upon ADP on the website, then it is much more likely that they're going to get drafted. So the Saints were probably buried on NFL Fantasy, where they were clearly listed in the top 12 on ESPN, leading to a much higher rostership ownership percentage. So the Panthers have the second lowest point total on the week with just 18 and are 4.5 point dogs to the New Orleans Saints. This game has the lowest over-under on the week with just 40.5. Now, I, for one, am actually a big fan of Bryce Young. I think a lot of people hopped off the bandwagon because of how great CJ Stroud looked and how much of a steaming pile of dog shit Bryce Young was. But I do honestly think with the coaching changes, getting away from Frank Reich, bringing in a new system is going to be able to push Bryce Young forward to playing better and to not looking like a complete and utter fucking bust, because Bryce Young was hilariously bad last season. But coming out the jump, shout out Channing Tatum, I feel as though the Saints defense should be lighting the Carolina Panthers offense up like a Christmas tree. Saints also have an incredibly solid defense that you can argue is a top 10 defensive unit in the National Football League, making me like them even more. To me, this game feels like a absolute snooze fest, the type of game where you barely see it on Red Zone. Scott Hansen is just basically cracking fucking jokes at you about how you haven't seen the Saints and the Panthers play. I think this game could end up with lower than 30 points. I am being 100% honest. This matchup fucking sucks. It seems boring. Well, I'm going to be hoping that Bryce Young potentially has that resurgence this year. If I'm streaming the Saints defense, I won't be thinking that, but Saints offense isn't very exciting either. The Saints defense, though, is very solid. I don't see either offense really getting it going in this game. So the Saints defense is my second favorite defense to stream on the week. Now, the Saints, unlike the Seahawks, where it's like, ooh, we get to go up against the Patriots next week. That's fun. The Saints got to travel to Jerry's World in week 2 up against the Cowboys, and you can't be starting them in that game. Moving to defense number 3, we got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers going up against the left hands up. Who are we? The Commanders in week 1 at home in Tampa Bay. 9% rostered on Yahoo, 53.3% on NFL, 4.2% on ESPN. The books have the Commanders ranked 5th worst in terms of in terms of implied point total, with 20, tied with the Giants and with the Cleveland Browns. In this glorious matchup, I'm sure everyone who's been waiting for football, they've been counting the fucking days since the Super Bowl ended and the Chiefs became the Super Bowl champions. They've been waiting so long for football. They're just ecstatic for the Buccaneers versus the Washington Commanders, baby. So they're 3.5 point dogs in this game. The Commanders' offense, outside of Brian Robinson, who I feel is a solid running back, and outside of Terry McLaurin, who I feel like is a very solid wide receiver, it is as suspect as it gets. They get rid of Jahan Dotson. They do the Andy from Toy Story, I don't want to play with you anymore. Now he's in Philadelphia with NFC East rival, the Eagles. They have Ben Sinnott, who I think is a talented player, but he's a rookie. They've got Luke McCaffrey. They have some other pieces. But ultimately, outside of Terry McLaurin, Brian Robinson, and potentially the most washed running back in the NFL, Austin Eckler, the Washington Commanders offense is far from exciting. Now, I am excited to see what Jaden Daniels can do. If Jaden Stormy Daniels is legit, if he can have a solid game up against the Buccaneers. But I am really just hunting the matchup here. I don't even think the Buccaneers defense is all that great, but I'm going to stick with my guns here, stick to my guns in regarding to streaming defenses up against rookie quarterbacks in their debut game. And the cherry on top is that this game is at home in Tampa Bay. It's not even in Washington, where all 7 of their fans get to watch the game. And I know people will be like, Nick, I'm a Commanders fan. Don't say that. That's mean. Well, sorry about that. It's just a joke. Again, it's not a lot of the stuff like the stats I say. My actual take is very serious, but there's a lot of jokes thrown on in there. Week 2, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers head on over to Detroit. So you better turn the other cheek and run in the complete and utter opposite directions. Run clear away at Mach fucking 10, because I am not playing the Buccaneers up against what might be the best offense in the NFL in the Detroit Lions. Next up, we move to the cold like Minnesota Vikings at the New York Football Giants. 49% rostered on Yahoo, 5% on NFL, and 18.8% on ESPN. The Giants rank 25th on the week in terms of implied point total, which is very bad. They're also tied with the Browns and the Commanders, some teams we've been mentioning here, and are 1.5 point dogs in this matchup. Now, if they were going up against a offense that people actually really liked, or just somewhat liked, if they were going up against basically every single other team compared to the offense of mono man Sam Darnold, right, then the Giants would be big dogs. Shout out Nick Ercolano, right? The Minnesota Vikings offensively isn't the scariest in a lot of people's minds. I think that Kevin O'Connell's going to fucking dial up some game plans, cook something nice up Gordon Ramsay style, but the books clearly don't believe in them. So the Giants are 1.5 point underdogs in this game, but I don't really see the Giants doing all that well in this game. The idea of streaming defenses up against the Giants is as simple as doing the fucking ABCs, right? Daniel Jones sucks more dong than a Bella Danger. It's really that simple. You are just streaming up against the Giants because you get a piece of Daniel Jones' ass, right? You are just streaming up against a quarterback that reads the fucking defense like he's Stevie Wonder, okay? I am so confident that while I won't sit here and give the Gawk Gawk 9000, the Hawk Tua special to the Vikings defense, I have to like them up against the Giants. And we will talk about the Vikings defense a little bit more than just the matchup. And plus, the Giants lost their best fucking player. Now, I get they added Malik Neighbors. I think Malik Neighbors is actually going to have a halfway decent game. But Saquon Barkley was their best weapon, and now he's chilling in Philadelphia with the Birds. So that's a big hit to them. Their offensive line is very suspect, like I said, and I think the Vikings are going to take advantage of that. You will probably see a bunch of defense to stream videos this season where I am talking about streaming up against that bum Daniel Jones until something changes, right? Until magically Daniel Jones goes out there, surgical style, he's slicing and dicing his way through the defense like his name is O.J. Simpson. I'm not going to sit here and fucking pretend like I love Daniel Jones. The stink on him is unreal. You can smell it through the screen. The Vikings defense, in my opinion, are definitely going to be must drop going up against the San Francisco 49ers, a Sam Darnold revenge game up against the Niners next week. It's also important to note that while the Vikings defensive unit isn't amazing on paper, while you're not drooling, salivating, thinking about the Vikings defense, and while I fucking hate Brian Flores as a Dolphins fan, I will tell you that he actually does a great job as the defensive coordinator of the Vikings, and while their defense, again, on paper, the personnel isn't the best, Brian Flores is a guru in terms of being a defensive-minded coach as their defensive coordinator. Before we get on into defense numero 5 here, as well as the 2 honorable mentions, I would like to give you guys a quick word from our partner over at Underdog Fantasy. Underdog Fantasy is the best place to play NFL Pick'em in the whole entire universe, and Underdog has a great offer for you guys today. If you're a first-time depositor using promo code Notorious or by clicking on the link in the video description, you'll be able to claim your free pick plus a first-time deposit offer of up to $1,000 in bonus cash. You will also receive a free pick of Travis Kelce higher than half of a total yard in week number 1 up against the Baltimore Ravens. All he has to do is get 1 yard and that pick will hit. So you're going to match that with another pick. Now that could be a pick from Thursday's game, Chiefs versus the Ravens. It could be from Friday's game with the Packers going up against the Eagles, or on one of the games on Sunday. Once you go ahead and do that, so for instance, we're to do Isaiah Pacheco higher than 62.5 rushing yards. You match that with the Travis Kelce pick, and you'll receive 3 times what you enter into the pick'em slip. For example, we use Derrick Henry and Pacheco here. You match those two together. You put $15 on this entry, and you'll receive $45. Again, if you are a new user to Underdog Fantasy, make sure you guys use promo code Notorious or click on the link in the video description. Back on into things here. Again, shout out Underdog Fantasy. At number 5, we got the hot Atlanta Falcons versus the Pittsburgh Steelers. 8% rostered on Yahoo, 9.4% on NFL, and 14.3% on ESPN. So the Falcons are probably the team that is going to be available in most leagues. A lot of these defenses might be available in all of your leagues. Really just depends which platform you are playing on. So the Atlanta Falcons are going up against Mr. Unlimited Russell Wilson in week 1. Mr. Unlimited and the Steelers rank 3rd lowest in terms of implied point total for week 1 and are 3-point dogs. Now this is a Arthur Smith revenge game. Ooh, right? Real fucking scary. The Steelers have George Pickens, who is a beast, capital B-E-A-S-T. The guy's a demon out there, and they have a decent running back core, and they've got Pratt Freiermuth. But ultimately, with how Russ has been recently, I think streaming defenses up against the Steelers might be advisable. I still think George Pickens could go balls deep into the Falcons defense, and the Falcons defense still has a very solid showing for fantasy football. The Steelers, to me, feel like a team that's going to end up winning a ton of games, but not really raining elbows, not really scoring a bunch of points, just playing very, very solid defense. The Falcons ended up bringing in Matthew Judon as well as Justin Simmons in the offseason, which gives a large boost to the defense. The Falcons were also very solid up against the running back position last season, so they might be able to neutralize the rushing attack of Najee Harris and a potentially hobbled Jaylen Warren. So I feel as though the Falcons will be a very solid streaming option this week. Stream it up against Mr. Russell Wilson. Feels like a solid shot in week 1. Now, I do see a scenario where you rub the crystal ball, the game ends, and maybe Russell Wilson's cooking things up, right? But ultimately, when push comes to shove, my best bet is that the Falcons win this game and that the Steelers' offense outside of Pickens looks relatively suspect. Now we move on into the honorable mentions. Actually, before that, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. But the Falcons play up against the Eagles next week. So that's a Dikembe. No. That's a hell to the no on streaming the Falcons next week. Now we got the honorable mentions at number 1. We got the Cincinnati Bengals versus the New England Deflatriots. Now, the Bengals are rostered in far too many leagues for me to even consider mentioning them. With that said, if you have not maybe drafted yet, maybe your draft is tonight, or maybe your draft is Tuesday or Wednesday, or maybe even Thursday right before the games kick off, or they are magically available in your league, they would definitely be my favorite defense to stream on the week. I want to be streaming defenses up against the Patriots. And at number 2, we got the Chicago Bears going up against the Atlanta Titans at home in Chicago. Another defense that is rostered in far too many leagues for me to actually spend a solid period of time talking about them. Bears have a rock solid defense, Viagra style, and are going up against a new look Titans offense that, while I'm pretty excited about, Quarterback-wise, with Levis, very spotty last season, and the Bears are very solid defense, so I am very excited about the Bengals and the Bears this week. But if you couldn't end up getting them, you should definitely go with the other defenses. My favorite defense to stream for week 1 is the Bengals, but technically the defense that I would probably pick up is the Seahawks due to their first 2 solid matchups. Again, going up against the Denver Broncos and then up against the Patriots, the Deflatriots, in week number 2. So thank you guys all so much for watching today's video. If you did end up enjoying today's video, make sure you guys hit that subscribe button like it owes you some money. Hit that like button down below. It would help me out a ton. If you want to follow me on Twitter or X, please do so at NotriousFantasy. If you'd like my weekly rankings or an answer to any of the questions you guys may have, check out the Patreon, link in the video description for $7.50. Love you guys all so much. Check out one of the videos on your screen if you haven't seen them already. Have a great rest of your guys' day. See you guys later with the waiver wire video. Have a great one. As always, good boy.